In the interest of time, I will go ahead and get started, and if they reach out or appear, we can just go a little out of order. I think that'll be okay. We will start with welcome and introductions. This is the Advocacy Issues and Programs Committee, so hopefully you're in the right place. This is going to be our last committee meeting, committee or board meeting for 2024. So we will see everybody in January of 2025 for our first board meeting. The mission of this committee is really to work with our providers who are conducting direct service, connecting stakeholders, those providers, and hopefully use this meeting as a catalyst for keeping folks up to date with our various programs, and then also pushing for other new programs, which will be included in our meetings. So I will start with introductions. My name is Marissa Webb, and I'm the Continuum of Care Coordinator within the Office of Homelessness Prevention and Intervention.
I'm Chris Primo. I work for Arbor Youth Services, and I'm on the HPI board.
Christina Ellison, New Beginnings Bluegrass.
T.C. Johnson, Fayette County Public Schools McKinney-Vento Program.
Bruce Davis, HPI Board.
Evan Charles in for Marty Jones, Community Action Council.
Erica Dominguez, Lexington Rescue Mission.
We are just conducting introductions, so we'll let you get settled before we get back to you.
I'm David Chad. I'm the Chief Programs Officer, which is the same thing with all the titles, just matches everybody else now. So here at the Hope Center, and I'm also on the OHPI board.
I'm Adam Kuhn. I'm the HMIS data analyst for the Office of Homelessness Prevention.
I'm Anita Nellis, Director of Counseling Services at VCTC.
Wonderful. This meeting is actually chairless because Bo Revlett served his time as chair of this committee and has since rolled off. So if one of our board members in this meeting currently is really thinking about chairing, I would really encourage you to think about this one since it currently is chairless. Moving on to our meeting minutes, please take a look in your packet beginning on page 2 of your advocacy meeting packet, which went out last week. You should find the meeting minutes for October 23rd, 2024. Please take a moment to review those meeting minutes so that we can vote to approve. So I'll give everybody about 30 seconds or so to refresh your memory and to take a look at those minutes. And we will need a vote on those meeting minutes. And this could be from anybody in the continuum.
I'll move.
Christina.
I'll second the motion to approve the October 23 meeting minutes.
Bruce, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I heard David's very soft second.
Well, I didn't hear it. Well, that's all right. I didn't
It's a
hear it.
tentative second.
Bruce said it with confidence. But
That's all right.
I heard it there.
I yield to David's second. That's all right.
Christina moved and David seconded. That's just for the approval of the minutes. Is there any discussion?
I call for the question.
Yes.
Yeah. Call for the vote.
Okay, well then let's do it. Let's vote. All those who approve?
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful. Okay, moving on to new business. I don't think our presenters from Ampersand are here, so we will skip them, and if they show up during our meeting, then we will include them in wherever we're at. So we will move along to our funding and priority discussion. This is something that I'm sure we will talk about in the new year as well, but LFUCG is starting to start thinking about our funding priorities and our budget requests, and because of it beginning to be that time of year, we also wanted to bring funding priorities to this committee and talk about how we would like to spend our Innovative and Sustainable Solutions Fund. As you all are aware, we moved from a $750,000 flat amount to now being, I think, 1.3% of past year's revenue for the city, which for this year equated to about 1.4 million or so. So we're working with an increase compared to previous years. And we just wanted to solicit the membership and how you believe what would be good avenues to spend that money. What would be some good options for us? So I'd like to open the floor if folks have any ideas. A couple things that we have funded previously, just to kind of get everybody in the right mindset of kind of where we are at, is that we previously funded straight outreach with Community Action Council as well as with the Hope Center. We also have funded this year an intensive case management program, and with that RFP that went out, that went to Independence Place. So they are currently conducting intensive case management for folks experiencing homelessness within our continuum. We also have an RFP we've conducted an RFP for a landlord engagement project, which went to Lexington Housing Authority, which is underway. In fact, I think just in the last couple weeks, they've had a landlord table discussion to bring in some landlords, and that money is really to hopefully engage landlords in wanting to participate in our programs, and also provide some things like, additional security deposit, additional funding for landlords who are participating in our programs, to provide that assurance that investing in our programs and participating within the continuum and providing for folks experiencing homelessness is a worthwhile endeavor. So those are some of our previously funded programs, and I just want to open the floor for any ideas.
Remind me with the funding, when we had the big conversation about whether we wanted to do kind of flex funding kinds of things, and we were kind of talking about the best way to sort of do that. What pot of money would that come from, or is that this?
That would be this, yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that for this. Yeah.
Is that the money that came from the railroad?
So you are thinking of last year. That money was actually a donation from, I believe it was like RJ Coleman, and that money actually went into the Lex and Homelessness Fund. So we were able to specifically provide, it wasn't quite flex, it was first month's rent and security deposit for folks who were at the Hope Village last year. But yeah, similarly, right, we could do a first month's rent security deposit, another fund. That's, I think, similar to potentially what we did last year. A flex fund, I know, is something that we've had some discussion about. So yeah, this is a place, this money, this Innovative and Sustainable Solutions money is a place for, exactly as the title suggests, kind of a creative way to really kickstart or implement a program. Some of the barriers that we've been seeing. For example, I know that one of the reasons why we were so adamant about having a landlord engagement program was because from this committee, right, we sent a letter and fought really hard for a ban on source of income discrimination. And then when the state decided that that was not going to be a thing, right, okay, now we had to move to trying to entice landlords. We tried the enforcement approach, so now let's try the carrot approach. So this is money that could be used in a variety of ways.
Does the funding for what's going on with the hotels for the winter shelter program coming out of this funds?
That is different funding. This would be for funding priorities for the beginning of the fiscal year for LFUCG, which starts in July. So all the money for like winter has already been like determined of where that's coming from.
Just so many things that are kind of out of the box that we use often that and I'm trying to recall that conversation, but transportation certainly, storage units, a utility bill that they've gotten a little bit behind, a uniform or work shoes, like there was a lot of that kind of chat last time. And I do recall Jeff wanted to have some parameters around it and what that process looked like, but it's those weird little costs that often aren't covered, that would be really helpful.
You know, there's a program, it's called WIOA in Lexington through the career centers. If your client goes through WIOA and he gets a job, they will buy him boots and uniforms. And they'll also give him a $50, once he gets a job, they'll give him a $50 incentive check.
Have you had much luck with that at
Yeah.
all? I've heard about that actually, and it always seems too good to be true, so that makes me happy.
I work with them with my homeless veterans, and I
Okay.
could hook you up with who you
Okay,
talk to.
that'd be great. Yeah.
Me too. Give me that information.
So I think along those lines, like the miscellaneous funds for, like, if you have, even if you have like rental assistance funds and all that, then pay for application fees, and like, it just, things like that, and all these apartments are coming up with fees, and more fees lately.
Administration.
Yeah, administration fees and whatever. But like, I feel like there is a gap there where a small amount of money can make a big difference in getting people housed. Because it's, I mean, we're not entitled to, $20 application fee or,
Right.
whatever.
Something that's a little more expensive, like eviction, I would say like eviction rescue funds, like where someone has been evicted and they owe an apartment complex. Like I have a client right now that owes an apartment complex. Well, 2 different apartment complexes, close to about $10,000 between the two. And she will never pay that off or be, and may not ever be housed if we can't figure this out.
Have you worked at all, they're not gonna come up with that money, but have you worked at all with Legally and the Bluegrass eviction folks? They're really amazing. Now, they don't have $10,000, but I really like their eviction prevention kinds of things. They've done good stuff.
Yeah, she was a-
Car repairs are always kind of helpful, especially if you're a person with several kids. Buses can be really hard. Yeah.
What would be good is if you could get a place here in town that does car repair and work out a deal with them. Like I've got a guy in Nicholasville that any veteran I send to him, he'll let him make payments and then he gives them repair at lower cost.
That's nice.
I mean, if you have somebody, you can do that here in Lexington with.
Yeah.
I know for me, storage is huge
Yeah.
because a lot of times, like families that get evicted, they lose all their properties. And so once we help them with housing, then finding, furniture and trying to help them reestablish is hard. It's been hard. So if we could get some kind of program, a storage facility that would be willing to work with us, where we could save their belongings and they didn't have to start completely over again.
I mean, that's another one we should do, it's just like furniture and household items. Was at some point there a program that did like vouchers for the restore in the
There
community?
was.
We used to get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like something like.
And Saxon used to be really good, but I mean, you
They
have
ebb
to
and
get up
flow.
at 6 in the morning to get, I mean, I'm not even thinking about getting up at 6 in the
I
morning.
know. And they ebb and flow. Sometimes it's for their folks and then sometimes it's not. Right now it seems to be open, which is
Well,
nice.
and I talked to somebody the other day that said the warehouse was full.
Yeah.
So they're trying to move some of that out of there.
The restore, I think, it's been a couple of years. Calipari had donated a large amount of money for restore cards because they came through our family resource centers. And so I think it was like maybe $100 on each card. And so we were able to
I
help
get a
the
lot of
families,
stuff.
yeah.
I know they have who's doing the mobile like shower?
Yeah, the Dignity Station.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's in partnership
I
with
don't know if
Catholic
that
Action.
meets the need, but I always worry, like restrooms and shower, I think is always a difficult thing. I know people use public libraries, but sometimes the time's not great, or they get kind of, well, I shouldn't even say they get booted out. Library's great, I don't know that they do that, but I don't know that there's enough of that for the need of the community.
And the laundry ones, the mobile laundry units, that would be helpful.
There's a program in Georgetown that takes over a laundromat twice a month, and the families from the school go and wash their laundry for like the whole day for free.
Wow.
Lola's or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Something
I
like
forget what
that.
it's called, but my friend helps with, she's the Frisky in Georgetown.
It's an awesome program.
Yeah.
Sandy Douglas, Dr. Douglas does it here too. I think he has a Metaphor laundromat. And they get vouchers through the Family Resource Centers.
That's really cool. I like that idea, Chris.
Marissa, I guess we're basically talking about, some different ideas, new ideas, but also I wanted to mention, because the first program you mentioned, my understanding that street outreach over the years has been very successful, and is there any question about it not continuing at the level at least it's been?
I think it has been extremely successful. David, I'm sure, can speak on to the ample success that we've had just in trying to connect with our folks that are not regularly engaging, as well as with House Bill 5 in effect. I think the street outreach is needed more than ever. The, I guess, issue that we run with funding street outreach from this particular pot of money is that because it's intended to be a funding source to pilot programs and then for programs to become sustainable, finding a sustainable funding source for street outreach is extremely difficult, which is why we have had street outreach 0.1, street outreach 1.5, and now we're on street outreach 2.0. So we've had to kind of create, build on the type of program that street outreach is, if only because of the limitations of the funding source. But I don't foresee, or I don't expect us to not continue thinking that it is such a vital part of our system and not trying to,
Fund it somewhere.
yeah, fund it
Yeah.
somewhere, somehow, and
But-
fit, a square peg into a round hole as best as we can, because we know how important it is for our system. The issues which, I know David can speak on, is finding a sustainable funding source that's not local, or even if it is local, right, having to exist within the parameters of the intention of this funding source.
Yeah, I'll add to that. Thank you for saying that, Bruce, because I thought it was inappropriate if I said it.
Well, that's what you asked me to mention earlier. I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding.
Don't forget to get your money when you.
That's right.
Check with him, man. The problem is, I think, I have applied for so many things in the last year, and even the things that are out there, very temporary, like 1 year or just very brief, and not sustaining long term. And so I think, I hate the idea that it comes out of this fund, to be honest. I wish it would come out of somewhere else. And maybe it will, because I do like the idea of funding new programs. But I feel like, with coming from this, if we have to create something new, I have ideas. But eventually you're gonna run out of new ideas, and you just need to figure out a way to pay for it. But I do think it's it's a good program to have, and that they're able to reach out to a lot of people in a lot of different places that we're not getting in the shelter, that we're not getting in any of our other centers, and plugging people in. And I think, when you look at the hotel project for the, and I'm talking to the choir here, but when you look at the hotel projects this winter, you see, a good idea of how many people are still out there that outreach needs to be engaging with. And, if we don't have street outreach, I don't know who does that. I was around before and we just didn't do it. you know? I think there were a lot of people that our system didn't really contact 7, 8 years ago. So I think it has made a huge difference, not just our program, but the community action program, the rescue mission, and all the other programs that exist. Even with the 3 of us, there aren't enough outreach people out there. You know, New Beginnings does outreach, and I think everybody, even with their hands in it, still is on a small scale compared to what we could have with community this size.
Well, and I think too, like, especially us, like, all of our other programs rely on street outreach so much. Like, I'll correct you, David, it's an excellent program to have.
Yeah.
But who has decided the spirit of innovative and sustainable solutions?
So that was decided in 2014 when this office was created and the fund was created. I will be transparent. I'm not sure. Internally, we have discussed the limitations that were imposed on it in 2014. Last year, right, we were able to discuss that having a flat amount that was set in 2014 is not quite going as far 10 years later, which is to say we know that there is an administrative process to potentially try to edit some of those, how this fund was initially created. But I know that it is an administrative process, and I'm not sure if that's something that we would be, like, we may have to engage the entire continuum to express this is a need because of having to potentially create a street outreach 3.0 and then 3.5, and just because of the type of funding source and the lack of funding that we are getting with, like, House Bill 5, right? We're not getting any funding from the state, but yet they have emphasized, right, that there would be a need for a street outreach to go and engage these folks, or otherwise arrest could take place. So clearly the state recognizes that there is a need, but we're not receiving funding from the state, and as current, there's no federal clear pathways to fund street outreach, so it may be worth, as a continuum, trying to examine the limitations of Sustainable and Solutions Fund, but that's not something that I can say, like, here are the exact steps to do so.
I think that's definitely worth looking at, because we've seen how important it is and how it touches every one of our programs in the continuum. And if there's not another clear-cut funding stream for it, I think that's wow.
So I think ultimately, now I'm taking off my hopes there. I think the thing is if you can have a good balance between funding some sustainable programs, but still keeping a good portion of that money for new things, because you don't want hopes they're just always getting all the money for all this. You know, you want to be able to spread that money around to all the different programs, and I think there should be some onus on us to actually pursue other funding. So I think as a board, like having a discussion about if you want to change that, like how much of it is a percentage that you dedicate to ongoing programs, or that you can at least have the option to use for ongoing programs, but still maintaining a good portion for new programs.
Right.
But realistically, it's like some of the things probably need to be funded in government outside of this small, tiny fund, you know?
Yeah. And it is something I think that it would potentially be helpful to think about potentially shifting maybe to what percentage is seen as, sustainable funding and what percentage is seen as piloting programs off, because the intent was written in, again, 2014, when it was just a flat amount year after year after year. And it was a pretty, over the years has shrank and gone even smaller of an amount, versus now when the amount is bigger and has a little bit more flexibility.
I don't know if something like this already exists in Lexington, so I apologize if it does, but, a lot of core of things that we do, certainly our court interaction. So there's victim advocates at the county attorney's office, victim advocates at the Commonwealth, victim advocates in family court, But I'm presuming that a lot of folks that we're working with have interaction with district court, probably some small, crimes. We used to have community service workers, trustees, and it was usually women from the detention center who identified as having a history of domestic violence, which most of them always did. And they could come and do community service work while they were in the detention center at Greenhouse 17. They could go to groups, they could do whatever. So many of the women that came out when they were coming out of jail had nowhere to go. They were gonna be homeless. They were in because they were surviving on the street, right? So it was either prostitution or shoplifting or, some small drug infraction kinds of things. And then another thing that they said was that there was a few people, I don't know if this still happens, but I would imagine it would, they would kind of befriend some of the folks that were in jail. They'd put money on their books. They'd come visit on Visitors Day. And so these women were gonna go stay with these guys when they got out, and it just sounded bad, like from the whole process. But they were desperate, they had really no place else to go, they didn't really wanna be on the street. So these people were kind of, I'm gonna say grooming, but grooming while they were in custody. It'd be interesting if there was a advocacy piece, meeting with people that are going through the court system, that are either, they're going to be homeless when they're released or they came in. It'd be interesting to kind of do something in that process, especially with House Bill 5, right? Because you're gonna even have more percolating up because they're kind of coming in there. And I don't mean just women, men as well, but people, I'm sort of saying things that you all know, but we do really crazy things to survive. And so it'd be nice if you had somebody right there kind of go, I don't need you to have Joe put money on your books, like here's where you could go when you get out of custody, and here's services, and here's, kind of connect them to things, sort of, be kind of interesting. Yeah. We used to think that a lot with people that were being charged with prostitution, there was nobody, because they weren't victims, right? I mean, they were, but they weren't coming in the system as victims, so there was no support for them at all. And you're just seeing this turnover of the same women coming through. It was painful.
Mental health care as well, like when they come out of jail, they get, 2 to 3 weeks worth of medication, and then they don't get referred to a doctor or anyone to help them stay on that medication, which then results in them going back to the same behaviors as before because they're off their medication and they go back to jail. So someone to guide them through that process.
Yeah, it'd be kind of like a different street outreach, but street outreach is right in the, kind of in the detention centers and or court system versus on the street, but it's such a space where people are kind of left unattended.
Right. They're just recycled back.
Because they're coming through as the perpetrator or the the defendant.
I know today we met with Charlie Lantern with the Goodwill program. Of course, we had the Hands Up program. And so it's actually working really well, but it's such a process. So in that process, we need transitional housing. We need some time to be able to help our families have a place while they are going through the process. Like we just recently had several that have gone through the program. They've gone through the budgeting classes. They've got better employment, so it's easier now for them to sustain housing. In fact, today on the report, we only had one that could be potentially evicted, but that's 1 out of 69. And so, but our biggest challenge right now is transitional housing, trying to have them a holding place while they go through the program. Because that's the biggest part of it, is that they need to go through the program. They need to be able to sustain the housing once that they're in the program. So for us, I know transitional housing is huge right now.
That's the struggle for college level too. They just, we got a little bit of everybody that y'all work with, your students' parents, and it's a struggle to try to help them understand too. Even if we could find a place, you have to be able to sustain it.
And that's the biggest key. And so, with that program, at least they have what they call a career coach that's assigned to them that does a complete assessment. Like, they may even have old utilities bills. Well, they help them get a payment plan set up, you know, so there's things. We had one family that when they did the assessment, they needed mental health services. Well, Goodwill provides mental health services. So they were able to get the things that they need, and that's what we want them to do. So now their kids are able to come to school and be able to be productive in school, not be absent, you know, not have behavior issues, but to be more productive academically. So, and that's been huge with getting them to get through that program. But I know that's a lot of calls that I get from parents like, you know, well, we're only in the hotel for a certain amount of time. You know, what do we do after that while they're going through the process? So that's huge.
You know, it just occurred to me, like, we work a lot with the Department of Corrections, people coming out of the prison system. We work very little with, like, the local jail, and I think, like, what impacts all of us are things like arrest for prostitution, or, like, criminal trespassing arrests, the arrests that tend to show up for a lot of our population and be part of the House Bill 5 thing. So, like, they have reentry people to jail, they have mental health staff. I ran that program for 8 years. But how often do any of us have any contact with them? I think we need more involvement with, like, transitioning people from there so they don't end up homeless leaving there if there are other options, or, you know, just having people who can help with some of those low-hanging fruit things that are out there, like, you know, getting IDs and birth certificates and getting insurance turned back on, and, you know, getting access to, like, checks, getting that restarted. There's so many little things that you can do with that group to set them up to actually succeed when they get out, or just not go directly into the homeless system.
Yeah, this is not the first time, actually. Last week I was talking with a provider and they mentioned pretty much that exact same thing. So not even in this space, folks are thinking about that as a need. Absolutely.
And that could come out of the corrections budget, not ours, so.
I think this is a good discussion and a lot of really good ideas. Before we move on, is there anything else that anybody wants to add? Okay. I just want to make sure before we move on to continuing business that our friends at Ampersand are not in the room. No, I didn't think so, but I just wanted to make sure nobody was gonna take off that one hat and put another one on. So moving along to continuing business, I will speak on the lived experience engagement at our one of our meetings. I think at our Data and Systems Integration Committee meeting, Christina had mentioned that during our kind of transition period with the new coordinated entry assessment tool, it would be helpful to kind of get some feedback from our folks with lived experience and engagement, because we received some of that feedback from the front end and work for implementation, but especially if we're having a time period where we are attempting to make sure that we are accurately meeting the need and that we are being consistent with our assessment tool, and it's giving us the information that we need in order to accurately place folks in acuity appropriate housing. The biggest part of that is hearing from our folks with lived experience directly. So we anticipate to probably have a lived experience and engagement committee meeting the first month or so of the year. We know that folks are pretty busy in January, but hopefully that'll give us a little bit of time to engage with some of those folks then. So once we have that flyer, we will definitely be sending that out. Another item that I think is really will be helpful and important, and something that we didn't do last year that I would really like to do this year, will be engaging those with lived experience and expertise after the Lex count, both from our folks who were in shelter that evening, like, you know, did the folks introduce themselves? Do you understand kind of what, were they able to articulate what they were doing? But then also on that side, right, not just how was the Lex count itself, but also involvement in the data part of it all, how we go about doing that, and why we kind of make sure that we're not duplicating efforts, why we are trying to make sure that we have accurate information about our housing inventory on any given night, as well as the number of folks who are unsheltered, and then how we use that data and actually being able to hopefully demonstrate and make sure that folks know, right, it's not just the Lex count, right, should not just be like with the involvement of just counting folks with their involvement, but also how that data is then after being utilized, and the narrative that we provide with with that data, right? If there's an increase, where we're seeing that increase, but then bringing that to our folks with lived experience, and kind of getting some testimonials, right? If this is where we see in the data, does this, talk about is this, reflective of your experience? And if not, is this reflective of maybe an experience of somebody else that you know, or potentially contradictory? Is there something missing that we're not seeing in these numbers that we need? So really wanting to make sure that those meetings continue to be a place for movement forward, as well as feedback, right? We don't want it to just be feedback. We want it to also be implementation of that feedback. So be expecting that in the first couple months of one meeting the first month of the new year, and then another in the second month. That would be a lot, I think, for one meeting. So any questions about that? Okay. For program standards, I don't need to tell all of you, it has been a pretty busy November, December, and because it has been pretty busy, unfortunately, I've just been unable to provide those program standards for rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing here within this packet to be examined and voted on by the continuum body, but I expect for that to take place in in February, so that way that provides ample time for all of our providers to receive those edits from this office, provide any feedback to those edits, so that way then we can provide it to this group. So thank you all so much again for engaging with that discussion. It was not in vain. It's just taking a little extra committee meeting to make sure that it gets in front of you all and is full and complete. Last is the National Homeless Persons Memorial Day. Hopefully everybody received that flyer for that event, which is taking place later this week. I have this right in front of me. Sorry, I've not been a part of that planning.
It's tomorrow at 5:30.
I think it is. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that I had the time right. Didn't want to tell people. Yes, tomorrow the 19th at 5:30, and that is going to be at Christ Church Cathedral, which is located at 166 Market Street.
Does it start at Tandy Park though and then go to Christ Church Cathedral?
The
Because
opposite.
visual-
It's opposite, yeah.
It's the opposite. So it
Meet
starts-
at the cathedral and then walking to Tandy Park for a candlelight vigil.
Gotcha.
I'm glad I looked to make sure. Any questions about that? We hope to see everybody there. And then lastly, I think that concludes our continuing business. So if there's any other issues or public hearing,
I'm having a hard time keeping a handle on our hotel people. I don't know if that fits in here, but they move around.
Yeah.
They're
Oh,
zippy.
God. You're driving our transportation department crazy. Because that's huge right now, because it's already an extended over the routing, and it's a constant. It's a constant.
yeah, we have noticed that there has been a lot of folks that have been in and then have left, and I know Chris can speak to this too, pretty directly. It is quite difficult. I know that somebody had asked previously, what about if somebody, if we know somebody is not in hotel, but then comes back to hotel. Definitely still be recording that, as you know, as you are aware of, in the Google Sheet. We understand that we may not know every time, but hotel staff has kept us pretty up to date if anybody has left, and how far that they've, how long they've been gone for. But it also leads to, if we have somebody that we put in hotel and then they said that they are able to reside a couple of days with a friend, maybe talk to them, or have your case managers talk to them about, is that a long-term option for you? You can still maybe access some of the other services. If you have income, HIP, the application fee assistance program with community and resident services, things of that nature, you would not be, precluded from those, but maybe emergency shelter through hotel is actually not the best fit.
And just for clarification, I'm not complaining, I just sort of feel bad of not being a good steward of like money and hotel space, and I just feel like you guys are okay with it, I'm okay with it, but they ebb and flow. I guess you all know that, but.
Yeah, that's just one of the challenges. One of the challenges with this type of model is exactly that. I can say internally we've talked about other models that are not this model for next year, which I know for everybody here probably would be what we would want is something other than what we're currently working through, and especially for our office of 3. Running a shelter program on top of our regular duties is definitely straining for capacity. And we know that it is for you all too, asking you all to conduct this work on top of your other regular job duties. So we definitely would be looking for, and I can say that, that the process examining maybe where we go for next year for 2025 into 2026. We've already kind of thought about that internally.
I don't know how you all are doing it. I don't know how you're doing it. You're
With-
doing
with-
more than what I would ask you to.
With
It's a
the
lot.
help of all of our wonderful partners. That it really is how we're doing it.
You just juggle like a clown in a circus.
I was just gonna say, also the location of it is awkward.
Yeah, which
It's so far out.
if any of our partners who are doing winter hotel do need bus passes,
I do. I just need to
Let me
get
know.
them.
Okay, I was gonna say, Chris, I had some for you. I didn't bring them, but let us know because we do have some of those bus passes for our winter motel folks to help make that
Yeah.
transportation not such a big barrier.
Because they
Because
call me like, can I go to the library? I'm like, no.
you don't operate a bus service? Oh, Chris.
All my clients think that I operate I do drive for Lyft,
Oh,
but they think that I'm their Lyft, and I'm like, no.
you gotta like take that sticker off the car
I
and put
know,
it back
I
on
need
the
to
car.
have one that, I need one of those little fancy lights, I just have the sticker, but I need the fancy light where I can just turn it off and be like,
That's
Chris,
great.
if you have any Fayette County Public School students, let me know, because I can give them a yearly pass.
yeah, I don't have any right now.
Maybe we should get an old taxi with some innovative and some stuff.
Honestly, no, I mean, back to the funding thing, but, like, a lot of my kids will get jobs at, like, factories, and there's no bus that comes when they get off of work, so they're walking, like, we'll also have a kid that works at Target at the night shift. He gets off work at, like, midnight and can't catch the bus, and he walks from Hamburg all the way back to Arbor, and it's like a
Wow.
3-hour walk.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
it's horrible, especially when it's cold or rain,
Yeah.
and there's no way for him to get back, and he can't afford to buy a Lyft every single night at that time of the night, it's so expensive.
Have you checked with Waypoint?
No,
Waypoint is doing, they have an Uber Lyft program they'll do for 30 days. And so check with them, and the one that's in Black and Williams, Sean.
I know, yeah,
Also, that bike shop over there, I think it's off 6th Street, it's something.
yeah, Broken Spoke,
If they work,
they'll let them get a bike.
yeah.
Yeah, that's, I mean, it's still a little bit of a hike, especially with that, but yeah, I've had several kids do that, go through that program and get a bike.
Any other issues or public sharing? Okay, then our next meeting is gonna be February 26th, 2025, at 1:30, right here. In fact, all of our committee meetings are going to be here at the Don Ball Campus Center next year. Our board meetings are still going to be on the 3rd floor in the Phoenix building, but our, our actual meetings are committee meetings are gonna be here. So, yes, thank you, thank
I'm
you.
happy to.
I texted her, she said.
And then with that,
Now, they.
since I'm serving as chair, we are adjourned.